Hello and welcome to Microsoft Hates Greg. My name is Greg Deckler, and welcome to another episode of Fabric Fridays here on Microsoft Hates Greg. This is our version of Fabric Fridays, where we basically go in and take a look at all the different threads on r/Microsoft Fabric on Reddit.com, and we have a good laugh about it. But before we get into it, right, I would be remiss if I did not at least thank the r/Microsoft Fabric moderators for banning me from this, or at least one of my alt accounts from this channel, right? So, so if you aren't aware, like I posted a video to the channel where I made an apology and I said, hey, can't we all just let bygones be bygones and all get along? And so they immediately banned me after that, right? Because I guess reasons. I don't know. But anyway, but if they hadn't done that, I would never have found this 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 gold mine of content in comedy, right? Because I'm not a Reddit user and I really don't care about Microsoft Fabric in any real degree. So I would have never even gone back to this, this subreddit. But since they banned me, then I started, started looking at it and looking at more and more. I'm like, holy shit, this stuff's hilarious. Just how bad this is. Like I had no idea, right? Because I don't really follow. I'm not a. I don't really. I'm more Power BI versus Microsoft Fabric, right? And I made my Fabric videos, a couple years ago. I don't really do much in terms of Fabric videos. Maybe, something random here or there. But my God, I didn't realize just how bad it is, right? And then before you start telling me, well, Greg, you're only showing us the bad, threads from Microsoft. That's all that's there, people. Like it's like the Festivus subreddit, of Reddit, right? The Festivus subreddit where it's just a constant airing of grievances, right? That's all it is. And interspersed with like one or two posts from the Microsoft team, like, "Hey, we're doing an Ask Me Anything," blah blah blah. I mean, that's literally all it is, right? So I would have never ever gone back to this subreddit, and I wouldn't be doing videos like this every week, which I'm trying to do every week. Although it's only been 3 days, people. It's only been 3 days, and I've got this many threads, just grievance upon grievance upon grievance about Microsoft Fabric. I had no idea it was this. It was still this bad of a product, right? No idea. Um, so anyway, I don't know who the genius was at Microsoft that like in genius in quotes that started up an r/Microsoft Fabric subreddit, because I'm telling you right now, like if I was a salesperson for Databricks or Snowflake or any other competitor to Microsoft Fabric, and my customer is like, "Hey, we're thinking about going to Microsoft Fabric," I'd be like, "Oh, well, here, let me copy this URL here and send it to you." And then just spend 10-15 minutes just reviewing the threads out here, and then you tell me if you want to bet your company on this platform. And I'll tell you right now, they win every time. They win every single time. Because I mean, even a semi-sentient hominid, right, looking at the threads on Microsoft Fabric would be like, hell no, am I going to bet the future of my company on this, right? Because it's like, if data's the new oil, Microsoft Fabric, from what I can tell, is like it's having some guy out there with like something equivalent of like a tire pump, just like furiously pumping away, trying to get that oil out of the ground, right? And the refinery, nothing works, right? I mean, if you get something to work, it's going to break randomly at some point, right? Or if you barely touch it, right, it's going to all go to hell and break. I mean, and as evidence of it, it's these threads, man. I got them all here, right? So it's just band-aid on top of band-aid on top of band-aid. It's just nothing works, which is not really surprising to me. I mean, it was always like, if Microsoft Fabric really is like a fabric, it's more like a patchwork quilt. It's like, we'll just bolt this shit on here and this stuff here, and then we'll bolt this here and we'll sew this on here. And it's a chimera, right? It's just, there's nothing, it's like Frankenstein, right? It's god awful, right? So anyway, so let's get into it, right? First one here. We have an affiliate company that we share data through external sharing. Basically, every time they change the password, all the links break. Is there any way to prevent this from happening? Apparently not. Right. Okay. The mashup engine cannot be converted to valid CDM templates. Getting error to So they were trying to do a data flow to a warehouse, right? And all of a sudden they started getting this error because they changed which warehouse they wanted it to go to, right? And they're like, they're about 50 queries, blah, blah, blah. So here's a lesson learned for you. If you, by some miracle of God, you get something to work in Microsoft Fabric, don't touch it, right? It's going to break, right? And that's not guaranteeing it's probably gonna randomly break anyway, but it's almost guaranteed that if you have something working in Fabric and you just barely touch it, it's gonna break, right? So that's lesson learned from this thread. All right, Power BI EM2 versus Fabric 16. So this, when they originally came out and they retired the premium SKUs for Power BI, which they never retire SKUs, but they did to force everybody into Fabric, right? They originally were going to retire the EM SKUs, the EM1, EM2, EM3. I believe they relented off of that because of just the feedback and outrage. Because here's the problem: an EM SKU allowed you to embed things internally at your company in things like SharePoint and Teams and that sort of stuff, without those users having to have a pro license to view that content. But with an F16, you do have to have a pro license to view that content, right? So to get around that, you'd have to go up to like an F64, which is way like 5 times as expensive as like an EM2, right? So, and I feel like I could help this person out because they should be able to, you can't get EM1 and EM2 via CSP. EM3s you can buy through the Azure portal, right? You can buy that within the Office portal. But EM1s and EM2s are weird. They've never allowed them to sell those on CSP. I don't know why. So you always had to get them through volume licensing agreement, which that's kind of gone now. But you can still get these. I think I checked on this. You can still get this through like CDW or CDWG, whatever it's called now. So you can still buy this. The other thing you could look at is like an A2 SKU would be an equivalent to an EM2 SKU. But so I feel like I could help this guy out and help answer this question or whatever. But they banned me, so guess I won't be helping. Copy job issue. It comes undefined when choosing data both for new and existing copy jobs, even facing a similar issue. Any solutions to it? Nope, it's just broken. That's just the way it is. Restore trial workspace. So they had a trial workspace. It expired, which is I'm really surprised about because I've had a trial workspace in Microsoft Fabric for like 2.5 years now. It's never expired. It always says it's going to expire, but then it just all of a sudden I have 28 more days on it. But anyway, they expired and they can't recover it. And they tried to convert it, but they aired out. Of course it did. So, yeah, screwed. Sorry, man. You lost your stuff. Copy data to S3 cannot establish a trust relationship. Again, more errors and problems, right? In terms of underlying connection was closed, can establish a trust relationship. How do you fix this? Apparently you don't. Nobody knows. I mean, it's always funny, like when the Microsoft folks, because they chime in constantly on these threads, like when they're conspicuously absent, right? And they're just like, well, yeah, that doesn't work. So we have nothing to say about it, right? How to handle empty timestamps. Basically, they can't get a null. It always keeps on defaulting back to 1970, 0101, like the Unix epoch, right? Whatever. SAP list of tables too large for dropdown and copy activity and copy job. Might this be a gateway configuration issue? No, it's probably just doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work because it's Fabric. So tough luck. Mirrored SQL DB gets synced to next stage, right? So they're getting successfully synced my mirrored SQL server. The problem I'm seeing is that the replication monitor does not show any tables, even though they're clearly there in the underlying JSON in the Git repo. So also when I click on configure replication, 6 tables are selected. So basically he has to go through and do extra manual steps. And he got it fixed, but it's like it shouldn't be this hard, right? This is one of those, it shouldn't be this hard. So he added a 7th table and it didn't come through, so you had to go manually go through to make it show up. Just everything in Fabric is just extra steps and band-aids, basically. Enable change data feed doesn't persist in materialized lake view, right? So this is a big long thread, but it's basically what's going on here is that when he's refreshing this thing, it's actually clearing his change data feed property. And it shouldn't be doing that, right? And then there's actually people that are commenting that, it's removing the CDF option after writing data, as you observed. Then the same thing, there's no change data to update the MLV, then the option stays true. Once change data is identified and loaded, it removed the setting. I'll ping the MS team responsible. So just some random problem, right, within Microsoft Fabric, which is par for the course. This one is an interesting one. Apparently, I just include this one because I don't know who this guy is, but he's weird. But he's basically has no training in any of this stuff. and they made him a senior business data analyst role. And he's apparently tasked with Fabric, and like, good luck, man. It's like, but this apparently is the level of intelligence of organizations using Fabric, right? Is that they just hire people with no experience as senior data analysts, right? Brilliant companies out there using Fabric. Let's see here. What's this one? Oh, this one. Oh, yeah. It's just a rant initially, and then he goes on and like here's all the problems, right? Constant downtime, authentication issues, unclear errors, paths of tools and implementations that dead end unexpectedly, right? As an example, import tables, changing direct link after size was hit, changes the URL. Like, how about that? Idiosyncrasies, poor documentation. I mean, you name it, he's got a list of the stuff, and it's all the stuff you're going to see throughout all these tabs, right? Don't recommend it. And then there's like, but then this is the Fabric community, right? Like, who let the Tableau bot loose? Sounds like a skill issue. This guy's got 15 years working with this. But don't worry, professional you 4950. I've got your back, man. Everything you listed in your grievances with Microsoft Fabric, there's examples of them throughout all these tabs, right? So, but Microsoft and their zealots, they're just like, oh no, it must be a skill issue. It couldn't possibly be anything wrong with our platform, right? Has anyone's users consistently ran in 20% personal bookmark, right? So there's that kind of stuff, and he's like, has anybody found a better way? Apparently not. There's no solution, right? New Office 365 activity on pipelines. We're trying to migrate to legacy notification activity, but the new activity is giving us a hard time. Whenever we set up with our service account, we're not able to share the connections with others. Whenever someone tries to branch out workspaces, it fails, and the underlying connector not available to users. Da 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 da. So yeah, what kind of auth are you using? There's only OAuth 2.0. So it's like a Microsoft user doesn't even know how their product works, right? That's the level of help you're going to get out here on this Reddit from the Microsoft folks. Terrible, right? Help with UDF bugs, right? There's a bunch of allow right back to Fabric Warehouse, gets errors, right? So it's going to data flows staging warehouse, right? Which it shouldn't be. So anyway, it's a bug, right? So there you go. Securely connect to Azure services. Right now, they have to use one thing for notebooks and Spark Access, VNet, private gateways. Is there an actual plan to bridge this gap so that we don't have to have this convoluted mess? Nope, there is no plan. It's always going to be a convoluted mess. Maybe 5 years from now, it won't be. Anyone else running into integration runtime issues? As of this morning, my copy jobs won't work and local SQL tables won't load. All my services are healthy. Anyone else running in the same issue? Is there an error message? Yes, there's 9518. Integration runtime is busy. Please retry later. Right? It gives the information. Yep, it's a bug. It's a problem in the service. Right? I am using a lookup activity and is not showing any table or files I am pointing to. Why is that? And I am getting errors like whatever that is. But I'm using my own workspace. Any help from anyone? If you re-authenticate, basically, it's a bunch of like, have you turned your computer on and back off again? This is the help that they get from the Microsoft folks on this Reddit subreddit, right? Brilliant. Help needed. How do I upgrade Fabric SQL to get rid of this error? Trying to extract the DAC pack file, right? Purpose of deploying from one workspace to another, you get the following error. Does anyone have a clue? Well, that's unfortunate. You're getting an incorrect error message. So they can't even, Microsoft Fabric doesn't even report back the right error messages a lot of times, right? How sad is that? So anyway, it's caused from like pausing and unpausing stuff. And basically your stuff can get stuck in a pause state even if you unpause it because it's Fabric, right? Having issues with Fabric pipeline ingesting from SQL Gateway to Lakehouse. From what it seems, it should be really easy, but it's struggling. Created the pipeline. Basically, basically a bunch of stuff is failing and confused why it's not able to connect to Lakehouse I created. They have at least one table created. I don't know that has to do with anything, but again, shit just doesn't work in Microsoft Fabric. Error with preparation of data for AI. I was using prep data for AI and semantic model, and it was working fine. And then all of a sudden, it started not working. Error message, blah blah blah. And this is funny. Like this Microsoft folk here is like, they're not curious as to why they get random errors every day, right? So they get random errors all the time in Microsoft Fabric. They're only curious that they haven't come across this particular error. But random errors within Microsoft Fabric, apparently, according to this individual, are just that's to be expected, right? Brilliant, brilliant product this is. What to what resilience check failed. Would love to know what the cause because it's getting increasingly difficult to tell customers that lake houses are a good idea, right? So trying to refresh the metadata. Okay, so not the only way I found to fix it in double quotes fix, drop the table and rerun the pipeline. It's like these are all the band-aids that you have to do within Microsoft Fabric just to get anything to work in the platform. I had no idea it was still this terrible, right? Has anyone used this feature, disaster recovery consumed? This is just poor documentation, right? So they're trying to use a disaster recovery feature, but they want to know what is the impact on their CUs and everything else. So he found this table, but could someone explain what it means in practice? One like BCDR write via redirect every 4 megabytes per 10,000. What does that even mean? Does this apply to semantic models? Doesn't appear based on documentation. I had never heard of this feature. This is just bad documentation, right? So that's pretty much par for the course from what I can tell with the Microsoft Fabric documentation. It's pretty terrible in general. Semantic model, direct link on one lake weirdness. Has anyone experienced this behavior? Semantic model storage is direct link on one lake when directly connecting to model through PBF desktop, not in edit mode. Every measure is corresponding measure suffixed with format string. That's brilliant. So when the user exports a visual to Excel, both the measures in the visual and the format string measures get exported. Can this only be me? I don't know, but no one has an answer for it. So, and that's been sitting out there for 2 days. Brilliant platform this is. North Europe issues with capacity. Has anyone experienced today with running queries on SQL endpoint in North Europe? Status page shows some issues related to data flow Gen 2 only. I'm getting canceled by user messages. UI seems to not be loading as well, right? So, yeah, so this one is great. So they're complaining about the fact that like they're finding the errors before the Microsoft team is, right? Which shouldn't be the case, right? And then what was going on here, and this is fascinating, we actually stopped the capacity yesterday because queries were just stacking. As a result of stopping it, our bill actually got higher because we had to pay for all the capacity that we borrowed from the future smoothing. So performance goes down and the bill goes up. Brilliant. That is that sums up this platform in a nutshell. And I've mentioned this around the capacity, the way that they do capacities versus like in Synapse, right? It's pay for what you use, right? So if you had queries stacking up and you basically stopped everything in Azure Synapse, you wouldn't pay anything extra. But no, when there's problems in Microsoft Fabric, you pay for that, right? Because when there's problems in Microsoft Fabric and your queries stack up and you're borrowing from the future because of the way they do their smoothing and capacities, it actually costs you more money. Brilliant, brilliant system. So if you want to pay for Microsoft Fabric being broken, if you want to pay when your data platform is broken, then Microsoft Fabric is the right call, right? That's what this thread is saying. Unbelievable to me that anyone would put up with this, right? But that's Fabric for you. I could not get this thing to work. Looking for suggestions. Here's my setup, right? Service principal, and they're the blah, 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 graph API. It's unhelpful stuff, but more shit that doesn't work in Fabric. Bottom line, deployed pipeline from dev to test, but half the connections still point to dev, right? So they use the deployment pipeline to try to, deploy stuff from a dev workspace to a test workspace. But when they do that, half the stuff still points to dev, right? Stop using deployment pipelines. That's the solution, right? Brilliant. Don't use what's in the system, right? Don't do it that way because it's gonna fail. Do it some other convoluted band-aid way. Brilliant. Key vault references support for virtual network data gateway. When can we expect the key vault reference support in virtual network data gateway connections? Apparently never. 2 days ago, still nobody's responded. Again, conspicuously absent the Microsoft folks because they don't have a good answer for this individual, so they're just going to not reply. Views on schema-enabled lakehouse. So basically, Spark views are unfortunately not supported in schema-enabled lakehouses. So this is something, and there's a number of comments and threads about this kind of stuff where, and I think that one guy that was like, really ranting about Microsoft Fabric was like, they tell you that this is a feature, but then it's a feature, but it's a feature with like 72 caveats, right? Well, if it's a schema enabled lakehouse, then it doesn't work. Or if it's this, it doesn't work. Or if it's larger than 3 gigs, then it doesn't work. Or if you have a varchar, you know, whatever, column in it, then it's not going to work. It's like it's 1,001 caveats, right? For any feature within Microsoft Fabric. It's just hilarious. Um, Warehouse connection. I keep refreshing the subs people are talking about, but inexplicably no one has. So basically, they had a bunch of stuff that was working in their warehouse or SQL to warehouse connections using service principal, and just all stopped working randomly. Right? Nothing worked, and there's nothing on the Fabric page basically that's saying that something's down or there's an issue or anything like that. So it's like, oh man, yeah, I've noticed the same pattern. Weeks before big Microsoft events always seem to bring random instability to Fabric. Well, yeah, because they roll out crap on Fabric regardless, right? But even on the run up to before a conference, they're going to roll out extra garbage, right? Because they're trying to, make this big splash at the conference and be like, oh my God, look how great Microsoft Fabric is. And all they do is end up breaking the platform. So there you have it. There's another Fabric Friday for you. And again, I think next time I do this, because it's only been 3 days and this is all stacked up, so I'm gonna start doing it in the pattern. Today is actually a Friday, so next Friday I'm gonna have to open up a whole new like browser window to probably be able to have all the tabs because I just can't, me with my tabs and everything. But this is too much even for me, right? Trying to keep track of all of the Microsoft Fabric problems and threads that are out there. It's, and this is just, 3 days worth. God forbid, you double that and then, an extra day. Oh, I can't even imagine, right? That's way too many tabs, even for me. Probably, the worst offender in terms of too many tabs in a browser. So yeah, that's it. That's all I had for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.